Keleth, the ancient dragon, had lived for thousands of years. His scales were marked with scars from many wars. Each scar told a story of a fight or a loss. Long ago, he was a proud warrior among his kind. But now, his kind were gone, lost to time and battles that never seemed to end. Keleth felt tired, not just in his body but deep in his heart. His wings were heavy and his eyes often looked far away, remembering things no one else could see. Now, Keleth hid in a ruined cave on a cold planet. It was nothing like the bright worlds he once knew. The cave was dark and damp, with rocks covered. In moss, he made his nest from broken branches and soft earth, but it never felt like home. Sometimes the wind howled through the stones, sounding almost like voices from his past. He did not answer. He just curled up tighter, wishing for sleep that would not come. Food was hard to find, and each movement hurt his old wounds. Still, he kept going. Keleth did not know why, but some small hope still lived in him. Far away on Earth, a young boy named Ethan was also struggling. Ethan was only 9 years old, but he felt older. His mother had died the year before, and his father had moved them to a small town to start over. Ethan missed his old home, his friends, and most of all, his mother. His father tried to help, but he was sad too. Their new house was close to the edge of the forest, where the mountains began. At night, Ethan sometimes heard strange sounds from the hills. The townspeople called it the beast in the mountains, but Ethan thought it was just stories. In the mornings, Ethan walked to the little school. He did not talk much to the other kids. He liked to read by himself and draw pictures of dragons and strange places. The teachers said he was quiet but smart. Some kids made fun of him for believing in old stories. Still, Ethan kept listening to the tales the old people told in town. Some said the beast was a monster. Others said it was a spirit. Ethan just wondered if maybe, somewhere in the world, magic was real. One cold afternoon, Ethan walked home alone. Gray clouds covered the sky, and a chill wind blew from the mountains. As he passed the forest, he heard a low, sad sound. It did not sound like any animal he knew. Curious, Ethan stopped and listened. The sound came again, soft but full of pain. He looked around, unsure what to do. Part of him wanted to run home, but something made him step closer instead. He followed the sound, careful not to make too much noise. The trees grew thicker, and the light faded as he went deeper into the woods. Ethan shivered but kept walking. After a while, he found a path he had never seen before. Branches hung low, brushing against his shoulders. Then he saw a trail of broken plants and deep marks in the soft earth. Something big had passed this way. Ethan single quotes as heart pounded, but he did not turn back. He remembered his mother telling him to be brave and kind. He followed the trail until he reached a rocky hillside. At the bottom, hidden by tangled vines, was a cave. The sad sound was louder here. Ethan crouched down and looked inside. At first, he saw only darkness. Then he saw 2 golden eyes, shining in the gloom. Kyle watched the boy from the shadows. He could smell the fear and the hope in the child. He was surprised. No one had come close to his cave in a long time. Keleth thought about roaring to scare the boy away, but he was too tired. Instead, he waited. The boy did not run. He just stared back with wide eyes. Ethan's hands shook, but he took a step closer. He could see more now. The dragon was huge, his body covered in scars and old wounds. His wings were folded tight, and his long tail curled around him. Ethan saw that the dragon's eyes looked sad, not angry. He felt sorry for the creature. Slowly, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a sandwich he had saved from lunch. He held the sandwich out, hoping it would show he meant no harm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly the dragon stretched his neck and sniffed the air. Keleth did not remember the last time someone had offered him food. It smelled simple but warm. He took the sandwich gently, careful not to hurt the boy with his sharp teeth. Ethan smiled, feeling less scared. He sat down just outside the cave and started talking. He told the dragon about school, about moving to the new town, and how much he missed his mother. He talked about the old stories he loved and how he wanted to believe in magic. Caliph listened, surprised by how honest the boy was. The dragon did not speak, but his eyes were kind. When the sky began to darken, Ethan stood up. He promised to come back the next day and bring more food. Caliph watched him go, feeling a strange warmth in his heart. He wondered why this human child was different from the others he had seen over the years. As the night came, Caliph thought about the boy's words. For the first time in a long while, he did not feel quite so alone. Back at home, Ethan's father asked about his day. Ethan wanted to tell him about the dragon, but was not sure if his father would believe him. He just said he had gone for a walk in the woods. His father nodded, looking tired. Ethan lay in bed that night, thinking about the dragon's eyes and the promise he had made. In the cave, Caliph curled up in his nest and closed his eyes. He felt a little less heavy, as if the boy's kindness had lifted some of his pain. He dreamed of bright worlds and old friends, but also of new hope. The wind outside was softer, almost gentle. For the first time in many years, Caliph wanted to see what tomorrow would bring. The next morning, Ethan woke up before the sun rose. He could not stop thinking about the dragon in the cave. His dreams had been filled with the sight of Caliph's golden eyes and the deep, sad sound of his voice. Ethan felt something special about their meeting. He hurried to get ready for school, but his mind kept drifting back to the cave. At breakfast, his father asked if he wanted to do something together after school. Ethan shook his head. He said he wanted to take a walk by himself. His father looked worried, but did not say no. At school, Ethan tried to pay attention, but he kept thinking about what food he could bring for Caliph. He saved some of his lunch, wrapping up an apple and a piece of bread in a napkin. After the last bell, he walked quickly out of town and into the woods. He took the same path as before, his heart beating fast. The forest was quiet. Birds chirped and the leaves whispered in the wind. Ethan felt nervous but also brave. When he reached the cave, he stopped and listened. For a moment he thought Caliph might be gone. Then from the darkness he saw the dragon's eyes open slowly. Caliph did not move. Ethan sat on the ground and placed the apple and bread in front of him. He spoke softly, saying hello and that he had come back as promised. Caliph watched the boy for a while. He could feel that Ethan was scared, but he also saw hope in his eyes. Caliph slowly leaned forward and took the apple, eating it with care. He had never tasted such food before. It was sweet and strange. He licked the juice from his lips and nodded his thanks. Ethan smiled and started to talk again. He told Caliph about his day at school and how some kids picked on him for being quiet. He said he liked to be alone sometimes because he missed his mother and felt out of place. Caliph listened closely, his long tail curling around his body. For a moment they both felt less alone. Days passed, and Ethan came to visit every afternoon. Each time he brought a little food or something special. Once he brought a small blanket he no longer used and gave it to Caliph. The dragon took it gently, placing it with care in his nest. Caliph began to trust Ethan. He even let the boy sit a little closer each day. The cave, once filled with cold and fear, now felt warmer and a little brighter. Caliph started to speak with his mind, sharing simple words and thoughts. His voice was deep and gentle, like thunder far away. Caliph told Ethan about the battles he had fought. He spoke of other dragons, planets with bright skies, and friends he had lost. He explained how he had come to this lonely place, wounded and afraid. Caliph said he did not trust humans because long ago some had tried to hurt his kind. Ethan listened quietly, never judging or turning away. He wanted to understand. He asked questions, wanting to know about the stars and the old days. Caliph felt the pain lift a little as he shared his memories. He saw that Ethan cared, and that made a difference. Ethan opened up more each day. He told Caliph about his mother, about her laugh, and how she would sing him to sleep. He shared how hard it was to make new friends and how he worried about his father, who seemed sad all the time. Caliph listened and offered quiet comfort. Sometimes he told Ethan stories of dragon wisdom. He said that time could heal wounds, even the deepest ones. He told Ethan that true strength was in kindness, not in fighting. One day, as the sun set and the forest grew golden, Ethan brought a small drawing he had made. It showed a dragon and a boy sitting together under the stars. He gave it to Caliph, who took it gently in his claws. For the first time in many years, Caliph smiled. The smile was small and slow, but it warmed Ethan's heart. During these days, Ethan's father began to notice his son was acting different. Ethan seemed happier, even though he still did not talk much. He spent more time outside and less time alone in his room. His father asked where he went, but Ethan just said he liked the forest. His father worried, but he was glad to see Ethan. Smile again. In the town, some people started to wonder about Ethan's trips into the woods. A few grown-ups talked about the old stories of the beast in the mountains. They warned their children not to go too far. One day, a neighbor saw Ethan heading into the trees with a bag of food. She told others, and soon there were whispers about what the boy was doing. Ethan did not notice the talk. He was focused on his friendship with Caliph. He looked forward to each meeting. The dragon was still shy, but he started to show more of his gentle side. He told Ethan how the stars looked from other worlds and how he missed flying high above the clouds. Sometimes they sat in silence, just listening to the forest sounds together. It felt peaceful, like the world was bigger and kinder than before. One afternoon, Ethan found Caliph trying to stretch his wings. The dragon winced in pain, and Ethan saw that some of the old wounds had not healed. Ethan rushed home and searched for things that might help. He brought back a small first aid kit and tried to help as best he could. Caliph let him clean a wound with water and put a bandage over a scar. The dragon was touched by the boy's care. He had never known kindness like this from a human. He felt something new growing in his heart. Hope. Days turned into weeks. Their friendship grew strong, built on trust and shared pain. Caliph began to heal, not just in body, but in spirit. Ethan started to laugh again, sometimes telling Caliph jokes or stories from his books. The dragon listened and learned. He liked the simple joys Ethan brought with him each day, but trouble was close. The townspeople's whispers grew louder. Some parents warned their children to stay away from the woods. Ethan tried to ignore it, but he worried someone might discover Caliph. He talked to the dragon about the risk. Caliph thought about leaving, but Ethan begged him to stay. They promised to protect each other and keep their secret safe. That night, as the stars appeared over the mountains, Caliph looked at the drawing Ethan had made. He saw the boy and the dragon together, and it gave him comfort. He realized that, for the first time in a long, long life, he was not alone. Through the kindness of one human child, the dragon had begun to hope again. And in the heart of the forest, a bond stronger than fear or pain was growing every day. The weeks moved slowly and gently in the small town by the mountains. Every day, after school, Ethan walked to the woods with careful steps. He always carried a small bag with food, some fruit, or bread for Caliph. The path through the forest became familiar to him, and he learned to listen for the soft sounds of the wind and the distant calls of birds. He did not tell anyone where he was going, but his father noticed that Ethan seemed happier. He was still quiet, but he smiled more, and sometimes even hummed to himself when he thought no one was listening. Caliph waited each afternoon, hidden in his cave. When he heard Ethan's footsteps, he felt a strange feeling in his chest, something almost like excitement. He wondered at it. For centuries he had hidden from the world, but now he looked forward to this one human child's visits. When Ethan arrived, Caliph would stretch his old wings and greet him with a gentle nod. Sometimes Caliph even tried to speak simple words in a deep, slow voice. It was hard for him to form the sounds, but Ethan understood him. Their friendship was built on more than words. Sometimes they just sat together in silence. The cave was not so dark when Ethan was there. He brought stories, drawings, and laughter. He asked questions about the stars, about dragons, about Caliph's memories. Caliph told him of ancient worlds, bright skies, and the songs of his kind. The stories were full of sadness, but they also made Ethan dream. He drew pictures of dragons flying above mountains or of stars that shone like gems. Caliph saved every drawing, holding them gently in his claws. The dragon's wounds slowly healed. The food helped, and so did the kindness. Caliph could move more easily now. He sometimes left the cave at night to walk under the moon. Once, Ethan found him outside, sitting on a large rock and watching the sky. Caliph told Ethan about the constellations and the ancient names of the stars. Ethan listened, amazed, and felt like the world was bigger and more magical than he had ever known. But outside the little world they shared, things were changing. The town was small and people talked. Some neighbors whispered about seeing strange tracks in the mud or hearing noises in the night. A farmer said he saw something large move through the trees at dawn. Children were told to stay away from the woods. Ethan heard the talk and grew worried. He told Caliph that people were starting to get scared. Caliph listened, his eyes sad. He did not want to hurt anyone, but he remembered too well what happened when humans became afraid. One day, Ethan came to the cave with his face full of worry. He told Caliph that some men from the town planned to go hunting in the mountains. They wanted to find the beast and make sure the town was safe. Ethan was scared for his friend. Caliph's claws dug into the earth. He thought about leaving, but he did not want to lose Ethan. He asked Ethan what they should do. Together, they made a plan. They would find secret paths in the forest and hide deeper if they had to. Ethan spent the next days mapping out trails. He brought old maps and showed Caliph where he could hide if the hunters came close. Caliph listened carefully, and even though he was big, he moved as quietly as he could. They practiced moving through the shadows, slipping between rocks and trees. Caliph felt tired sometimes, but Ethan cheered him on. Their friendship grew stronger with every shared secret and plan. The townspeople's fear grew with every rumor. One afternoon, Ethan saw a group of men with rifles and flashlights gathering at the edge of the forest. They talked about protecting their families. Ethan knew they would not listen if he told them the truth about Caliph. He hurried to the cave to warn his friend. Caliph was waiting for him. Together, they listened as the hunters moved into the woods, calling out to each other and searching for signs. Ith and Ethan moved deeper into the forest, using the secret paths they had planned. It was not easy. The ground was rough and the trees were thick. Caliph was careful not to leave tracks, and Ethan helped by brushing away signs as they walked. Once they heard the hunters close by. Ethan's heart pounded. He hid behind a tree, and Caliph held still, barely breathing. The hunters passed by without seeing them. Ethan felt a wave of relief, but he knew they were not safe yet. They spent the night hiding in a small hollow, far from the cave. Caliph lay curled around Ethan to keep him warm. It was cold and lonely, but together they felt brave. In the morning, they heard the hunters calling to each other. Most had given up and gone home, but a few stayed, searching for any sign of the beast. Caliph wanted to go back to his cave, but Ethan said it was safer to stay hidden for now. While they waited, Ethan shared more about his life. He talked about his mother and the things she taught him. He told Caliph that she always said real courage was not fighting but helping others. Caliph listened and felt his heart heal a little. More, he thought about his own kind and the friends he had lost. He wondered what they would think of this small human child who showed so much kindness. The next day, the hunters left the woods. Ethan and Caliph made their way back to the cave. They were tired but safe. Ethan helped Caliph clean a cut on his leg where he had scraped a sharp rock. Caliph thanked him and said he had never known a human like Ethan. The dragon said he felt hope again, even if the world was still a dangerous place. The trouble was not over. Some people in town were still suspicious. A few said they had seen Ethan in the woods and started to ask questions. Ethan's father noticed that something was going on. One evening he asked Ethan if he was hiding anything. Ethan wanted to tell him the truth, but he was afraid. Instead, he promised to be careful and not go too far into the mountains. That night, Ethan sat by his window looking at the stars. He thought about Caliph and the promise they had made to keep each other safe. He wondered if the world would ever accept someone like Caliph. He hoped that someday people would see the dragon as he did a friend, not a monster. In the cave, Caliph looked at Ethan's drawings and the gifts the boy had brought. He felt stronger than he had in many years. He knew there was still danger, But he was not alone anymore. The bond between the dragon and the boy was deep and true. Together they faced the darkness and found a small light that would not go out. The sun rose slowly over the quiet town and the tall mountains. For a few days everything felt peaceful. Ethan kept visiting Keleth, bringing food, stories, and new drawings. The dragon was stronger now, and sometimes he even tried to smile. When Ethan made a joke, they sat together in the cave or outside by the rocks, looking at the sky. Sometimes they talked, and sometimes they just watched the birds fly above the trees. But soon, the peace in the town began to break. More people started talking about the beast in the mountains. One man said his dog barked all night and he saw strange shadows by the river. A woman told others she heard a loud cry from the woods. The stories grew each day. Soon, the townspeople began to worry and meet together. They said it was time to find out what lived in the mountains. One cold morning, a group of hunters came together. They brought rifles, flashlights, and big boots. They told the children to stay home and promised to keep everyone safe. Ethan heard about the hunt while walking home from school. His heart filled with fear for Keleth. He ran to the cave as fast as he could. When he reached Keleth, he was out of breath and shaking. He told the dragon that hunters were coming, and they had to hide. Keleth nodded. He did not want to fight or hurt anyone, but he knew that fear made people dangerous. Together they left the cave before the hunters arrived. Ethan led Keleth along hidden trails, just as they had practiced. They moved through thick bush, across cold streams, and over rocks. Keleth was big, but he trusted Ethan to guide him. Sometimes they had to stop and wait while the sounds of men shouting or dogs barking passed nearby. The hunters searched the woods, their lights shining between the trees. They called out to each other, looking for any sign of the beast. Keleth and Ethan stayed very still, hiding in a hollow behind a fallen tree. Ethan was scared, but he tried to stay calm for his friend. Keleth wrapped his tail around Ethan, trying to keep him warm. They spent many hours hiding while the hunters walked all over the mountain. Finally, the men grew tired and went back to town to rest. Ethan and Keleth stayed hidden until night. When it was quiet, they tried to go back to the cave, but the path was blocked. They heard voices nearby. Ethan and Keleth moved slowly through the darkness, hoping no one would see them. As they crossed a narrow stream, Ethan slipped on a wet rock and fell. He cried out, and Keleth quickly helped him up. Ethan's leg hurt, and he could not walk well. Keleth lifted Ethan gently onto his back and carried him through the trees. Even though Keleth was old and tired, he moved as fast as he could. He wanted to keep Ethan safe. When they reached a quiet place deep in the forest, Keleth lay down so Ethan could rest. The boy's leg was bleeding, and he was shaking from cold and fear. Keleth licked the wound to clean it and wrapped his wing around Ethan to keep him warm. Ethan whispered thank you, and Keleth told him not to worry. Back in the town, Ethan's father noticed his son was missing. He asked the neighbors, but no one had seen Ethan. Soon a search began. People walked with lanterns and called Ethan's name through the night. Some of the hunters wanted to look for the beast, but others cared more about finding the boy. The search parties went deeper into the forest, worried for Ethan's safety. As dawn broke, Keleth heard the voices of searchers. He knew they were looking for Ethan. He decided he could not hide anymore. Keleth gently picked up Ethan and walked toward the voices, making sure not to frighten the boy. When the searchers saw the dragon, they stopped in shock and fear. Some pointed their rifles, but others saw Ethan in Keleth's arms and shouted for them to wait. Keleth moved slowly and carefully. He laid Ethan on the soft grass near the searchers and stepped back. Ethan's father ran to his son and hugged him tightly. The searchers did not know what to do. They saw the dragon, big and strange, but also gentle. Keleth looked tired and sad, not angry. He made no move to hurt anyone. The people stood quietly, watching. Ethan's father looked at the dragon and saw the truth in his son's eyes. Ethan told everyone that Keleth was not a monster. He said the dragon had saved him and taken care of him. Some people still held their rifles, but others began to lower them. They saw that Keleth was not what the old story said. He was hurt and lonely, not evil. For a long time, no one spoke. The morning sun shone through the trees and the wind was gentle. Finally, one old man stepped forward and thanked the dragon for saving Ethan. Slowly, the crowd began to understand. They saw that the boy and the dragon were friends. Caliph bowed his head and waited. No one shot or shouted. They just watched as the dragon turned and walked back into the forest. Ethan's father carried him home, and the town was full of talk about what happened. Some people were afraid, but others felt sorry for the dragon. They remembered how he had risked his life to save a child. Ethan rested in his bed, thinking about Caliph and hoping. His friend was safe. He promised himself he would not give up on the dragon. No matter what anyone said. In the woods, Caliph found a quiet place to rest. He missed Ethan, but he was glad the boy was safe. He thought about what had happened and wondered if maybe the world could change. For the first time in many years, he felt a small hope that people might learn to understand him. As the day turned. Tonight, Caliph looked at the stars and dreamed of a better future, one where dragons and humans could be friends. The days after the rescue were strange for everyone in the small town. Word spread quickly about how the old dragon saved Ethan. People could not agree on what to think. Some still believed Caliph was a dangerous beast, but others remembered how gentle he looked as he carried the hurt boy out of the woods. There were arguments in the town square, with some wanting the dragon to leave forever and others asking if he could be trusted. Ethan stayed home, resting in his bed while his father sat at his side. His leg hurt, but the doctor said he would heal in a few weeks. Ethan's mind was full of worry for Caliph. Every day he looked out the window, hoping to see a sign of his friend. His father often sat with him and asked questions about the dragon. Ethan told him everything: the cave, the stories, the kindness Caliph showed. His father listened and did not get angry. He only nodded and said that sometimes the world is not as simple as people think. At first, Caliph stayed hidden in the deeper parts of the forest. He watched the edge of the town from far away, wondering if it was safe to return. He missed Ethan's voice and the warmth of their talks. The forest felt colder without his small friend nearby. Sometimes, Caliph heard the townspeople searching, or calling to each other in the woods. He did not go near them. Instead, he waited and watched, unsure what the future might hold. One morning, Ethan's father told him that some townspeople wanted to talk to him. They came to the house, carrying baskets of food and medicine as a way to thank him for sharing his story. They sat in the kitchen and listened as Ethan explained how Caliph was not a monster but a friend who needed help. An old woman who had lost her son many years ago began to cry. She said maybe everyone deserved a second chance, even a dragon. Slowly, more people started to listen and wonder if they had judged Caliph too quickly. Meanwhile, Ethan healed. When he was able to walk again, his father went with him to the forest's edge. They left food and a note, hoping Caliph would find it. The note said, "Thank you for saving me. You are not alone." Caliph found the gift one night. He read the words and felt a new hope in his heart. It was the first kind letter he had ever received from a human. He carefully carried the food back to his hiding place and thought about returning to the old cave. The next week, Ethan and his father waited at the cave at sunset. They brought a lantern, blankets, and fresh bread. Caliph came slowly, his large form silent among the trees. When Ethan saw him, he ran to the dragon and hugged his leg. Caliph bent his head low, and for a moment they just stood together in the golden light. Ethan's father watched them and saw only friendship, not danger. He thanked Caliph for saving his son, and Caliph nodded in reply. As the days passed, Caliph visited the cave more often. At first, only Ethan and his father came, but soon a few brave townspeople joined them. They brought gifts of food and small tools, and they asked Caliph for advice about things in the forest. Caliph began to help them. He used his great strength to move fallen trees after a storm and showed them where to find clean water. He even helped a farmer whose cow was stuck in the mud. People were amazed by the dragon's wisdom and gentle heart. Trust did not grow all at once. Some people still watched Caliph with fear. They stayed far away and told their children not to go near the cave. But others came to understand that he was not the monster from old stories. They saw how much Ethan cared for him and how the dragon cared for the boy. A few children even drew pictures of Keleth and left them at the cave entrance. Keleth saved each drawing, keeping them with the ones Ethan had given him. Ethan was happier now than he had been in a long time. He visited Keleth every day after his leg healed, and sometimes his father or a neighbor came along. Keleth told them more stories about the stars, the old dragon songs, and how the world was once full of magic. He told them that kindness could heal even the deepest pain. Ethan listened and tried to remember every word. Over time, the town changed. People started to look for ways to help each other, just like Ethan had helped Keleth. If someone was hurt, the others brought food and comfort. If someone was sad, they shared stories or sat quietly together. The mayor said maybe the dragon had taught them more about being human than any book or rule ever could. The children played near the edge of the forest, sometimes pretending they were dragons or brave heroes. The fear in the town slowly faded, replaced by hope and trust. Keleth grew stronger every week. His wounds closed and his scales became brighter. He flew short distances again, stretching his wings under the open sky. He always came back to the cave, never going too far. He said he did not want to leave his new family. Ethan smiled and promised that as long as he lived, Keleth would have a home. The dragon believed him. He felt the pain of old battles begin to fade, replaced by the warmth of friendship and love. One evening, as the stars filled the sky, Keleth and Ethan sat by a small fire near the cave. Keleth told Ethan about the worlds he had seen, the friends he had lost, and the battles he had fought. He said that sometimes, even when everything seems dark, a small light can change everything. Ethan listened and nodded. He knew that his own sadness had grown lighter because of Keleth. The dragon had helped him heal, just as Ethan had helped. The dragon together they looked at the stars and dreamed of a future full of peace. Keleth was no longer alone, and neither was Ethan. The bond between them was strong and true. Their story spread through the town and beyond, reminding everyone that kindness and hope could change even the oldest wounds. In the gentle night, surrounded by friends and family, the boy and the dragon watched the world with new eyes, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. As the warm days of summer turned into the cool days of autumn, the small town by the mountains changed in ways no one could have guessed. The story of Keleth, the ancient dragon, and Ethan, the young boy, was now known by everyone. People from other towns heard about the dragon who had saved a human child and stayed to help instead of leaving or fighting. Some visitors came to see if the stories were true. They brought cameras, notebooks, and many questions. Most went home believing that what they saw was more than just a fairy tale. Keleth no longer hid in the deepest parts of the forest. He moved freely between the trees and the edge of town. He liked to rest in the sun on a big, flat rock near the school where the children could see him from the windows. Some of the braver children came closer, leaving drawings, apples, or just waving at him. Keleth always waved back with his tail or made a soft sound that made the children laugh. The teachers told the children to be careful and kind, and most listened. Ethan was proud to tell everyone that Keleth was his friend. Ethan's father also changed. He worked hard at his job, but every evening he made time to walk with Ethan to the cave or the big rock. Sometimes they talked with Keleth about the old days, about family, or about how it felt to be lonely and then found again. The dragon listened and sometimes gave advice. He said it was good to forgive the past, but important to remember it too. He said family was not always the people you were born with, but also those who cared for you when you were lost. The town itself became a kinder place. People helped each other more. If someone was sick, others brought food or sat with them. If someone was sad, friends listened and shared quiet time together. Even people who once feared Keleth now waved when they saw him or left food for him in the forest. One day, the mayor invited Keleth to a town meeting. At first, some people were nervous, but Keleth came and listened quietly. When a problem was discussed, Keleth spoke with his deep, gentle voice, offering ideas that no one had thought of. After that, more people saw him as a wise friend, not just a strange visitor. As weeks passed, Keleth helped the town in many small ways. He lifted heavy logs when someone needed firewood. He showed the children where wild berries grew safely. He helped fix a broken bridge by the river. He never asked for anything in return, but people brought him bread, fruit, and even small gifts, like warm blankets. Sometimes visitors would come to the forest just to see him. A few still felt afraid, but most left feeling peaceful, touched by the gentle nature of the dragon. Ethan's life was full again. He did well at school and made new friends. He still liked to draw pictures, and now he drew Keleth flying through the sky or sitting with the children. Some of his drawings were put on the walls of the school and the town hall. Other children joined him, and soon the town was covered in pictures of dragons, stars, and brave heroes. The people began to feel proud of their strange and special friend. As time went on, Keleth and Ethan grew even closer. They spent quiet evenings together, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Sometimes they sat by a fire and shared stories about their lives, their dreams, and the things they hoped for the future. Keleth taught Ethan about the stars and the old songs of dragons. Ethan taught Keleth about human games, jokes, and simple joys like snowball fights or making pancakes. Both learned new things and felt stronger because of their friendship. Sometimes people from other places came and wanted to hurt Keleth or drive him away. They said a dragon could never be trusted, but the town stood together and protected their friend. Ethan spoke for Keleth, telling everyone how much the dragon had done for the people. His father and the mayor spoke too. They said that fear should never decide who belonged and who did not. Together, the town and Keleth proved that kindness was stronger than fear. As the first snow began to fall, the town celebrated with a festival. There were lights, music, and food for everyone. Keleth joined the party, wearing a big scarf that the children had made for him. He even helped build a snow dragon in the middle of the town square. Everyone laughed and shared stories late into the night. Ethan looked around and saw that the town was full of hope, joy, and new beginnings. One clear night, Ethan and Keleth sat on their favorite hill and looked at the stars. Ethan asked Keleth if he would ever leave. Keleth shook his head and said, "As long as I have friends and a family here, this will be my home." Ethan smiled and leaned against the dragon's warm side. Together they watched the sky and dreamed of the future. Their story spread far and wide. Other towns began to change too. Some people tried to be kinder to strangers and to those who were different. They remembered the tale of the dragon and the boy, and it gave them hope. Keleth and Ethan's friendship became a legend, but to them, it was just the simple truth. One act of kindness can change a life, and many acts of kindness can change a whole world. Keleth grew old, but he was never lonely again. Ethan grew up strong and kind, always remembering what his dragon friend had taught him. Even as years passed and things changed, the bond between them stayed. Whenever the world seemed dark, people remembered the dragon who found hope because a human child showed him compassion. And in the little town by the mountains, the story was told every winter, keeping the light of hope alive for all who heard it.